Good. Oh, good, good, good. We're connected. How are you?
Good to see you. How are you doing?
Stressed. Pretty stressed.
Well, you're getting married in 2 days, right?
That is correct. Yeah, married in 2 days. I have just, I say I didn't rush back, but I've come back quickly from the city centre after a 1 hour dancing lesson. So my fiance
Nice,
and I know what we're doing. Yeah, on the big day. So
nice,
that's,
nice.
yeah. How about the two of you?
All right. So have you been doing like continuous dancing lessons? Are you gonna, blow everybody away with some big over-the-top production or?
Well, the answers to there's two questions there, and the answers are yes and no. That's what I was saying. Oh, thank you, Lorianne. Thanks very much. Yeah, yeah. It's I've been doing we've been as a couple doing dancing, for a while, but yeah, this is another level. This is something where everybody's looking at us, and it's all very intense, and we're going to keep it simple. So
Hmm.
that's the idea. Yeah, do not
Makes
no
sense.
fancy.
Yeah, I mean, my personal attitude is I would rather do something simple well than, get over my skis and look like a moron trying to do something that I actually can do. Yeah.
How do you feel about dancing in general?
That I can't. Uh,
Okay.
so that's pretty much it. Uh,
Okay.
we did one lesson many, many, many months ago, and it was all right. It was very simple, but it's pretty expensive, right?
It is. Yeah.
So yeah, we sort of we're just probably going to do the classic shuffle,
Yep.
the wedding
Can't go
style.
wrong. The wedding shuffle. Yes.
Yeah.
Not quite as well known as the wedding march, but the wedding shuffle
So
it's tried and tested.
it is, it is. And let me also compliment you again on your wonderful venue. I mean, man,
Mm.
that place looks awesome. Not that you maybe want to talk about exactly what it is, but it's beautiful. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Thank you.
yeah, I was
I
very,
It is an incredible venue. We can barely believe that we've got it. And the thing that makes me a little even more nervous about the venue, this is for the ceremony specifically beforehand, is that they have not asked for a single crown, no money. The churches in this country, they will gladly accept a donation, but they won't like demand it, which is lovely, but at the same time, I think I'd feel more comfortable if money had actually changed hands.
yeah, that's weird.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
in our like middle class, affordable town,
Mm.
just a room where you would eat dinner for 3 hours is $10,000 if you tell them it's for a wedding. So, it's
Just the That's just the venue.
yeah, and that's not even for the ceremony. That's for like we're gonna put some tables in here. Yeah, so our reception is at our apartment.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah. No, no, no. I'm not
I
complaining. I just mean it's
no.
it's insane. It's insane. All the stuff out
Yeah.
there. So I mean, congratulations again and huge deal. And thanks so much for joining us. Because you have two
Yeah.
big things going on, right? You're getting married
Yep.
and you have a big book coming out.
Yep. Pretty stressed.
You understood. Understood.
Yeah.
Would you lead us into this first by telling us what this book is? Let me
Yeah.
make you co-host in case you'd like to share anything on your screen. Uh,
Yeah. I can do that. With great pleasure. What I should show you exactly. I'll probably show you I'll tell you what, I'll show you the latest kind of retail links, not so people go buy it, but so that you that's the most up to date things. Although I have no business sense whatsoever. I keep saying things like, "Oh, you
I'm gonna
don't need to
say,
buy
I don't know,
it."
like, but I sympathize. You and I, we are at heart academics. I always
Yes.
feel somehow that I'm doing something wrong when I say, by the way, you can spend money that helps here.
Yeah, no, good. Oh, bless you, Cameron. Thank you very much. I see a little. That's
Kind
very good.
Digimon.
Yeah, it is it is. On the one hand, I think I am a publisher's dream in like an I let's say ideal because I think I'm very dedicated. I think I tend to write how I want the finished thing to be, so it doesn't need too much editing, although editing is always welcome. But on the other hand, there's the business side to publishing where I am, I feel like I'm bothering people by mentioning that the book exists.
I know,
So,
I feel the same way. And it's sort of disheartening because I don't know if you experience the same thing I do, but it seems like if I get into a period where I'm remembering to mention it a lot, then
Mhm.
people start saying like, oh, all you do is flog your book. So I try to back off, and then I mention it again, and someone says like, "You have a book?" It's, damn it, right? Like, how do I hit the middle
Yeah.
where you know that it exists, and you don't feel like I'm just flogging it all the time? It's impossible to do.
Big time. Big time. No, yeah, I haven't come up with a solution. I can't offer anything. I'm just going with dropping it into conversation, steering the conversation immediately away. And if their ears prick up, then I'll happily answer questions. But there needs to be a hook. There needs to be something like that.
Well, you have some great hooks because actually I feel like let me start then by praising your book because I think that you have done something that's really, really, really hard to do. You have
Okay.
written one of those questions about language that answers questions people ask all the time. Now, that's a common thing for people to say about a book, but very often, even books that purport to answer questions that people have all the time don't actually answer those questions. They just kind of
Mhm.
like toss the question in the air and talk about how there's a question. You
Yeah.
actually answer questions I hear all the time when I tell people I'm a linguist. Questions like, why is I capitalized? You know, why is there a K before me? Um,
Mm-hmm.
actually, you talk, although we should talk more about what your book is, but even though your book is ostensibly just about the alphabet, you actually talk quite a bit about just the history of English in general
Mm-hmm.
and get into a fair amount of the variation between dialects and accents and pronunciations, both regionally and class-wise and otherwise, all of which is stuff that people ask me about all the time, even though I'm not an English guy.
No.
Um, you deal with questions that also, I get asked about the alphabet per se, like, well, why is there C and K and Q, right? Which is one of my favorite stories to tell people.
Yeah.
But you actually get into the stuff, tell it in an entertaining way. You've got a glossary in the back that, anytime you're using a term that might be unfamiliar to people, it's always in the back. You put it in boldface, people know they can look it up. Your footnotes add a lot. Actually, I want to ask you about a bunch of your footnotes because you have some dynamite footnotes. Uh,
Okay. God.
really nicely done book. I really do want to compliment you on it.
Thank you.
Now tell us
Right.
what the
Well,
book is.
yeah. No. 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 Frankly, I think we could just leave the conversation there. What can I? That is. Oh, that's very nice to hear. That's very, very nice to hear. I'm still getting used to this the fact that people have actually read the thing and that people will have opinions on it. And so far they've been positive, but no, this is great, and I don't know how to react to the situation. Let's put it like that. Hopefully, I'll have some practice over the
I get
next
it.
couple of months.
I get
Yeah.
it. Been there, yeah.
Well, because I suppose I love my subject. I'm obsessed with language and linguistics, and I love it, and I want other people to share in that love. And if it comes across as, weirdly, the the piece of feedback that I value the most is it was accessible and
Okay.
it was entertaining. I value that over more than, wow, you know so much.
Yeah,
I'm not interested in how much I know. I don't even know how much I know.
right.
Not to go too, Socratean, I don't know really have an appreciation of these things, but I do know that I have written this book and it's out there and the people are vibing with it. So this is great. I mean, I again, I don't want to, uh, I don't want to prevaricate. I probably should introduce it as
I was
well,
going to
though.
say, tell us what it's called. Yeah.
You've given a lovely commendation so far. So the book is called Why Q Needs You. And I like that title. It's essentially the subtitle unpacks it a little bit. It's a history of our letters and how we use them. And that subtitle was very deliberately chosen in that this book really tries to answer two big questions and lots of smaller questions contained within them along the way, but primarily two big questions. Number one, where do we get the alphabet from? Number two, why does English today use it in such a distinctive way? That's the main pitch, and these are these are big questions, and I really feel they need a book to unpack, or at least to fully appreciate. This book was a joy to write. It was a big task to write. It felt actually bigger than writing my PhD thesis as a process. I've described this. I've tried to put this into words previously that it's a very odd, strange feeling to write a book that is cleverer than you. It because there were themes and ideas about the nature of spelling and the nature of reading that just kind of cropped up along the way.
Hmm.
So I'm still processing it, and actually this experience of promoting the book will weirdly help me to understand it better, a book that I wrote. So it's a very strange position to be in. It was a big task that I undertook last year, to the extent that I had to get it all done, the bulk of it done, by September 2024 because I was about to start a new job.
Hmm.
But weirdly, the final chapter, the epilogue, unwritten because I felt like there are so many kind of I'm juggling so many balls and they're all in the air, and I need time to go away and process what I've just written. It's quite a
Gotcha.
big task. And the epilogue, well, who knows if I've staked the landing? But basically, that's it's a big book for me. And the fun thing, the kind of gimmicky thing, if I can say that, is that every letter gets its moment in the spotlight.
Mhm.
So it progresses from chapter A to chapter Z, or chapter Z, if you prefer. And basically, every chapter is a chance to explore that letter and the interesting things that I think are worth sharing, but also to unpack larger topics that maybe are relevant to that particular letter. Or some letters I didn't actually find particularly interesting to write about, but I used that chapter as an opportunity to talk about bigger themes that are kind of related. So that's the
Right.
idea.
I think it's
Yep.
brilliantly structured.
Okay.
For one thing, the chapters are a great length and they provide nice bookmarks to put in, right? I mean, most people, I think, are doing their reading in fairly small chunks. So these are nice, I don't know, probably 10, 15-minute chunks is
Mm.
probably about right.
Yeah.
And you know, I never would have thought about trying to tell the story sequentially about where the alphabet comes from while also working sequentially through the alphabet, right? So
Mm.
the earliest, and although it makes perfect sense, because when you think about all the historically linked alphabets, except I guess runes, Ogham, and then the Aramaic side of the branches, they all start with A or alpha. I guess it does make sense to sort of start the alphabet story there, but not only telling the story of A, but then kind of
Mm.
breaking the history of the alphabet into 26 pieces, while also taking these interesting sidetracks,
Mm.
right? You know, like the chapter on T takes a sort of side tack on runes, right? Which
Mm.
of course I was particularly interested in, and which I suppose I am not excessively patting myself on the back to say I had
Come on.
some influence on.
You did. Gratefully received help. Definitely.
But I thought that, you know, like just the little factoids scattered along the way. There's no chapter that's more interesting than another chapter,
Okay.
right? I feel like anybody, which is kind of surprising because you would
Mm.
think that along the way here you would come to something like L, which says,
Mm.
I guess it's not. Well, you can only split hairs here and say, well, it's not exactly the same sound in every language and alphabet. But, you know, there's sort of a smaller constellation of sounds that an L can cover, and you still manage to say really interesting things about it. And I kind of enjoyed the way that you highlighted the possible hieroglyphic antecedents of letters when there's actually a reasonably compelling argument that it's this hieroglyph or that hieroglyph. I've never
Yeah.
seen that done in an accessible book and done well, right? Because you actually understand how hieroglyphs work and don't
Hmm.
just gloss over that it's actually a very mixed system of logographs and like a
Yeah.
proto-abjad at the same time.
Yeah.
So. I
Uh,
just want to compliment you on that.
Thank you. Gratefully received once again. This is great because I know that you know your history and your linguistics and the study of writing in particular. Whatever that is called, we need to come up with a term for it as a field.
Graphology?
What is, sorry?
Graphology?
I think that's taken. I think
Is it?
that's like I get the feeling that graphology wasn't that like the Victorian pseudoscience about studying people's psyches by how they write.
Oh,
So we, like
huh.
graph graphemology, maybe, but
Yeah,
it's
maybe.
bugging me. Yeah.
I don't know. It's a really underappreciated aspect of historical linguistics, though, because we tend to, I think that a lot of people in talking about historical linguistics get very invested in teaching this difference between language and alphabet.
Hmm.
You know, we all can remember the thrill when we were, I don't know, high school students or something, and somebody pointed to some Cyrillic and said, that's Russian, and said, no, actually, what you're talking about is the alphabet, which is called Cyrillic, right? But we kind of lose track in distinguishing between language and script, but script has its own history, right? So
Mm.
right now I'm doing this Zoom class on runes, which is part of why I took an interest in your book about scripts. And finding that there's this whole parallel story in the story of scripts that parallels, but is not the same as the story of the languages written in them, uh, while influencing the language and the language influencing the script.
Mm.
And you talk about many, many different inflectional points in that history where one or the other happened. Do you
Yeah.
have a favorite example of such?
Well, I mean, yeah, I really appreciate this topic, but it is the topic. It's definitely one of the things in this book, one or two things where the concept feels cleverer than I am. Like it just feels so big as to try and disentangle these two things. Because I've gone through at least in the UK, the kind of normal way of learning linguistics at university. And one of the first steps is you separate out speech from writing, essentially, kind of your phonetics and phonology, and you separate that from writing. Absolutely crucial step. I don't, debate it at all. But once you've done that step, the writing just kind of gets left at the side. And you get this sense that it's writing is secondary. It's this kind of thing that it's kind of like representing. It's ancillary. A word I remember in one textbook is like handmaiden, very old-fashioned word, but it's like the handmaiden of speech, basically helping speech to be written down and communicated through a different medium. And yet it deserves our attention and it deserves our respect. It's just because it may be secondary in our lives as a species, we do, it's pretty normal. I can't think of a counterexample to learn writing after we learn speech, or indeed signs, another modality of language, which the relationship between signs and sign languages and writing is also what is that relationship essentially? But I digress. It's one of those topics that I hadn't spent enough time with writing, and it was difficult to write about, and crucially, then to then convincingly convey to the reader. And I had about one paragraph to sum all these complicated ideas up, and I'm pleased with how I went about it at the end of the day of just being like, this is let's separate out these two things in our minds, and once we've done that work, that little bit of unlearning, we can progress. Could I read from it? So I can
Of
read the
course.
section in particular, and then I will answer the question you actually asked. I'm just going to get up the file itself, which is takes a while on my little old
Well,
computer.
while you're doing
Um,
that, I'll mention, do you
yeah.
find, speaking of writing, that in the process of
Mhm.
writing, you think somewhat differently than presenting orally? Because you said you discovered a book that was cleverer than you were. And I think I know what you mean because I find myself in writing to be able to think differently than I do when I'm just thinking sort of orally with myself or talking to someone else. I
Yeah.
wind up structuring things differently and sometimes coming to new conclusions just from the process of writing about them.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that you demonstrated the power of writing to yourself while writing a book about writing.
Hmm. I might quote you on that. Sounds good.
Yeah, sure.
No, it's true, and yet at the same time, I completely agree. It's and yet writing also influences the way that we speak and the way that we talk. I had such an interesting conversation about this at a conference in June, where I'm a syntactician by training, so I study word order, as I've talked to on this on this platform before, and there's a lot of metaphors and ways of talking about word order that really are grounded in writing. I keep my whole PhD is talking about the left periphery
Mhm.
of clauses. That's actually a reference to writing, the idea of left, and specifically of Eurocentric writing as well, where what I'm really doing is studying the beginning of a sentence, which in writing comes to the left. All of these kind of heuristics that writing kind of muddles in our perception. And yeah, I mean, I totally agree. There's another thing as well that in the field of syntax, and maybe this is a better answer to your question, we tend to work with these kind of perfect sentences we in the way that we write, essentially. Your linguistic paper or in some prestigious journal will have a lovely complete sentence and then go on to analyze its word order. But I don't really talk like that.
Right.
Yeah, maybe let's say 4 out of 10 sentences that I produce in casual environment will be complete sentences by the rules of writing and punctuation. I talk in fragmented sentences. I repeat myself. I pause, and all of these things are maybe we have an idea of kind of perfect language that's so important to the field of syntax that is actually more to do with writing than actual speech. So
Hmm.
complicated. Yeah. I've thought about these things a lot. If I may, I'll just share the screen if I can do that. I should also say hello to everyone as well. Nice to thank you for having me back.
We're doing this very
Uh,
out of order.
can you see this?
You
Can you
should be able
see
to share. I don't
share?
see
All
it
right.
yet. Now I see you're sharing. I don't see what you're sharing yet.
Okay. Bum.
It just says that you
So
started screen sharing, but I don't see there. Now I see it.
great. Okay. So this is in the introduction, and started back. Though this be madness, bit of Shakespeare, and I'll concentrate, but like taking the alphabet as its inspiration and focus, it only seemed right to divide up its contents into 26 chapters, one for each letter. So that's the idea there. And everything I've kind of illustrated, like chapter N talks about double letters. Chapter O, I enjoyed talking about the difference between the way that I speak and the way that you speak, Jackson. Although there's a little bit of that in chapter H as well. So this is the crux of the matter. I had two, three paragraphs to kind of prepare the reader to think in a slightly more nuanced and linguistic way to unlearn before we
Hmm.
can begin learning, which is what like an undergraduate course in linguistics will do, as well as teaching you things. So the very format of a book poses challenges. Books are silent, yet the story that this book tells necessarily involves a lot of sounds. We are so literate nowadays that we tend to think of sounds and letters as being one and the same thing. We say that A, E, I, O, and U are the 5 vowels of English, which is a fair shorthand. I want to acknowledge that, but it isn't phonetically true. In Britain, so where I'm from, people often talk about other speech with phrases like dropping their H's or dropping their G's or having a broad A if you're from the south, like I am. But to drop one's H's actually has nothing necessarily to do with the letter H. It's not a comment on how someone spells, but rather how their accent avoids the sound that H stands for. Someone who consistently says at, av, and ate will surely still spell them hat, have, and hate. So that's the sort of idea that I'm getting at. The English language exists first and foremost in the medium of sound. It is the sounds of English that its native speakers hear as children, and it is those sounds and words made from those sounds that they are first encouraged to produce. And then we come to writing. It would be possible for someone to know English fluently, but not its spelling. I think that is historically the case. I think we should acknowledge that. And this is what I particularly wanted to share. The relationship between speech and writing is complex. In the modern world, the two are closely intertwined, yet still fundamentally independent. It can help to think of their relationship as like the double spirals of DNA, or like two twirling dancers. As we will see in their ancient dance, speech leads and writing tries to keep up. But I had one paragraph basically to separate out these two in the minds of the reader as best as I can, and then woof, chapter A, off we go.
Hmm. Well, and you do an excellent job. And actually, one of the things that you mentioned there, I think, is very critical that you discuss at several points in the book, and I think that it's an excellent point to make to specialists and non-specialists alike, is that the purpose of writing, well, you can't speak of just one purpose, but writing is not just about representing speech phonetically.
Mm,
And that's perfectly fine, right?
mm,
Because we have these value judgments about writing systems, and we say, well, English is so unphonetic. Why are there all these silent letters in a word like night? You don't have this problem in Italian, et cetera, et cetera.
mm,
But as you point out rightly, if you don't have the K in night, for a reader, there's that moment of deciding, well, am I looking at day and night, or am I looking at night and a horse? They are clues for us to grab concepts by. They
mm,
they verge toward that kind of logographic spelling system where you're recognizing a concept rather than a pronunciation.
mm.
And another thing that you point out very reasonably when you talk about one of the last chances there might have been to really universally change English spellings, it might have been Johnson's dictionary.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really compelling and interesting story you told about that. Like, really, that may have been the last pinch point where there could have been some changes that could have percolated down to all levels of society.
Mm,
But it would have been pretty arbitrary, right? It would have been based on the way that he spoke at his time. We would have already had changes since then. And my English has already changed in ways different from your English. So it would be about as arbitrary as me trying to say, well, now everybody needs to spell the way that I speak, right?
mm.
And then in 100 years, it's all going to be different anyway. So you have to
Yeah.
kind of stop the strain at some point.
Yeah. This is just it. And it is a very tricky situation. The kind of tagline that I've come up with is that English spelling is as distinctive as English history, and by
Mhm.
English history, I include everywhere the English ended up, including in North America. And okay, let's reform spelling. Let's tidy it up. It's how do we go about doing that? Do we base it on one particularly prestigious version of English? It's still with included in English. There's a good case of doing that with American English. American English, pretty broad category. Who's American English? Who within the history within the United States, which is a massive country. So, already in our, thought experiment of tidying up English spelling, we've alienated and annoyed all the other English speaking or English writing countries, such as my own UK, Ireland, Australia, India, big English writing and speaking country. And we've arrived in the USA. Okay, fine. USA, culturally very influential, very powerful. Who's English? If it's going to be Jackson Crawford's English, we might need to keep like the WH in what, which for a lot of American speakers they would disagree with, right? Because they don't have they do have the wine merger or wine merger, which you don't, Jackson. So
Although I did
yeah,
notice, I'm gonna quibble with something you said about that in the book because you mentioned it
sure.
and you said that it was seen as stereotypically Southern in the USA. I
Mm.
really don't think that's stereotypically Southern. I think it's a stereotypically old person.
Okay, fine.
Like,
I
it's a minor quibble I'm gonna make. Yeah,
Not at
right.
all. Yeah, fine. Go ahead. I don't know where I got that from. I mean, isn't that kind of the traditional southern states, deep south? Like what? Like whip? I don't know.
Maybe a really old Southern, but like I get made fun of it by Southerners as much as by anybody else. So
Huh. See, there you go. This topic is huge. It's
yeah.
absolutely huge, and I think I just have to make my peace with that. That I just can't have got it all right. I can't be in all countries of the English-speaking world.
No, but as long as we're picking on the pronunciation feature that I get made fun of for the
Mm,
most,
mm,
let's consider then, right? I'm one of the few cases, if you were basing pronunciation spelling on my pronunciation, I'm one of the few cases you could make for preserving WH on purely phonetic grounds.
mm,
But even for speakers who don't make that distinction, it helps them just quickly, instantly distinguish between words like, well, wine and whine. Uh,
mm.
and there is some value in that. I
Yeah,
mean, even languages that are more phonetic, quote, in their spelling system than ours, like Italian, you point out anno year, anno they have, right? The one spelled with H and one not. It helps readers just quickly say, oh yeah, I know what word I'm looking at.
yeah. which is a great example of writing existing according to its own rules, of not being entirely dependent on spelling and speech. I don't want to give English spelling a free pass. I do mention the fact that there are some things that could be changed, and we should be open to this fact. But I do want to invite that idea that, what are some of the examples? Night and night with a K is a good one. The three types of scent, as in the smell,
Mhm.
scent, the past tense of send, and also scent, as in, the money. Um, that can help easy comprehension of reading. It's almost like taking the middleman, speech, out of the picture.
Mhm.
Whereas, perhaps once upon a time when the alphabet is first being born, it's all about speech. It's very much, limited texts, limited contexts, not a very literate population, very closely tied and very closely harmonious with speech. But now we're all so literate in the world. Writing can accidentally take on its own rules
Mhm.
and end up with something that is not entirely reliant on speech. I don't want to generalize here, but it does seem to me like you can kind of have a big spectrum of writing that is independent of what speech is doing, but in some way representing it. And
Mhm.
the spectrum, on the one end, you have like total phonemic or indeed phonetic, where you're really strictly representing sounds. I mean, if we were phonetically accurate, that would look awful. If you've
Yeah.
ever seen like a phonetic transcription, the hardcore, like what we're actually saying, it's bonkers, so
Yeah.
almost unreadable. Um, so we can move away from that to phonemic, where it's only the key sounds that are getting their own symbol. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we might have something that is logographic, where it's ideas, morphemes that are being represented. Chinese is often held up as an example of this. Chinese, and I mean that like in the general sense, Chinese writing is largely I don't want to say detached, but it stands at a distance from speech within China. But again, it's not totally at the other end of that spectrum because Chinese characters have phonetic components that refer to sound. And weirdly, some, hypothetical future is like English and Chinese might meet in the middle, where
Yeah.
English just keeps diverging, and our written letters have less and less to do with phonemes, and Chinese writing has more and more to do with phonemes and sound, and they meet in the middle of my, hypothetical spectrum. So, yeah.
That's an interesting point. I had not thought about that in exactly those terms, but that continuum between logographic and phonemic writing that may even be a cycle if you watch it long enough. Right.
Yeah. What a funny thought. I mean, I honestly just don't think that human history's been around long enough to make it a cycle yet, but could happen.
Could happen.
Could.
Hey folks, we'll be back to your regular presentation in a moment, but right now I'm here at Grimfrost World Headquarters Longhouse with Johan Hegg, and I just want to remind you that if you have Viking needs, you have a Viking supplier. Grimfrost really cares about getting things right. And if you need replica, well, anything, right? Shields, helmets, weapons, board games, cool t-shirts, hats, all sorts of accessories like that. You can get them at grimfrost.com together with my books, and they ship just about anywhere in the world. So check them out. It does help support the channel. I mean,
Yeah.
you think about a hypothetical future English where pronunciation has changed enough that there is no relation whatsoever. Well, I mean, here's a thought about a move towards cyclicity. We mentioned Southern USA accents earlier. And of course, one of the most noticeable features of a lot of Southern USA English is that monophthongization of, night to nat, a vowel that
Mm.
is often represented by a, right, is way on the other end of the vowel chart.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you could get to a point where there's just zero logical connection. And of course, this is 1,000 years from now between the way
Yeah.
that something's spelled and the way that it's pronounced. And yeah, maybe
Mm.
you do get back to where they're basically ideographs. That's a funny thought.
It's just an experiment, but and this is one of the just ginormous ideas, concepts that just broke my brain as I was trying to tie up all the threads and write the epigraph, not epigraph, epilogue
Hmm.
to this book of just. the mess of English spelling is partly inevitable. There are some things that we could tidy up, but we're in a pretty sticky situation. And I just don't want people to think it's a mess. And I definitely don't want people to think that the power is not in their hands. There is actually something fundamentally democratic about writing. But
Mhm.
unfortunately, indeed, about all language, we do have total free reign to write and to speak as we wish. But getting other people to do likewise is difficult as well. So, for ease of communication, you need to make some compromises. And at the same time, d- you know, w the state of our writing reflects the state of our society. We do have fairly hierarchical societies. We do have a sense of, of a certain way of speaking and writing being superior to other ways. Definitely the case in the UK, where even though it's improved, northern accents are not the standard, tend to be looked down on. Essex, which I give a shout out to in the books, the speech of kind of London Cockney, again, kind of looked down on. Um, and so the state of our writing kind of reflects our unequal society at the same time, where we do believe there is a correct way. And that tends to set writing in a sense of we just have a sense of a certain way of writing being correct. And unfortunately, I think we're making a rod for our own back by going along with this
Mhm.
and believing that, like, oh, I can't spell or I'm illiterate or something like that. Well, very often, spelling mistakes are more phonemically accurate than the
Right.
standard spelling. And
Usually,
yeah,
a spelling mistake is a reflection of someone actually internalizing the system of spelling.
yes,
Right.
exactly. And if I could go back in time as a linguist, as someone who's written this book, I think you'd agree, Jackson, you'd go back and say, please, please make more spelling mistakes. They are excellent for telling us
True.
information about what's going on.
True. Yeah, I mean, actually, one of the things that we obsess about the most in trying to date texts from the ancient medieval world is, where are they deviating from the standard they've been taught? Because that tells us something about how they actually pronounce things. Yeah, that's
Oh,
absolutely true.
yeah.
Also, I want to point out the irony of you talking about the, differences in what accents are perceived as higher and lower, while you sound like a Disney villain, as you yourself admit. So,
Yeah, I put that in the book. I do put that. Yeah, this is just it. And the way that I speak, I just want to acknowledge that that's my bias. That's the way that I do English. I fully admit that, and the reason why I get jobs, I do voice acting work. People may or may not know that, like in the Czech Republic where I live, I actually do the exams for schools. So it's my voice that these on these poor Czech kids on the worst day of their life have to listen to. And I go there and I tell them this is not fair. There are other people who don't have my accent who you could be hiring who would do a better job than me, and you are not preparing these kids for the wider world of English. You're used to my voice, you end up in Scotland, you land in like Glasgow airport, you're gonna have a bad time as a Czech kid.
yeah.
It's gonna be hard. And anyway, I digress. Yeah, I fully acknowledge these things, but I will say that my accent, while I was proud to acknowledge that it is just my accent and that English is so much more rich and diverse than just my way of speaking or the kind of general American way of speaking. I enjoyed that. It did make writing the book very, very hard
Well,
because, yeah,
you're
sorry.
very, very good about when you discuss some aspect of pronunciation, saying, in my English, and acknowledging that there's a lot of variations. You don't pretend like you're the god of English and that,
No,
deviations from it are unacceptable or something like that. And I'm only lightly ribbing you because I thought that it was pretty funny that you compared your own accent to that, like,
yes,
like,
Hollywood
I
villains,
mean, you're
basically.
right that in Hollywood, this, like, if I want to cast a James Bond villain, he's going to sound like you,
It's going
right?
to sound like
It's,
me.
it's
I
true.
think I think Jeff Lindsay did a video on this about where on earth this comes from because again, it's not a given.
No.
We're not. I'm not just saying this. This is not a bluff. There's nothing inherently evil or Machiavellian about me and my family, who also speak like me. I want to say this. We're quite nice people. So it is odd that that is the standard way. But yeah, I'm very pleased that you acknowledged that. But it did make the book difficult to write and indeed difficult to edit. And when I would come back and to certain things, I put this in the introduction. Books are silent. I somehow need to guide you as a reader to the correct sound.
Right.
Uh, with while using the IPA, which I International Phonetic Alphabet, I decided to use this from the outset. I think it is the right approach. I stand by it, but it needs
Mhm.
unpacking. But then I would write whole sections. I would, do a paragraph quickly, and I'm thinking, okay, the Greek letter omega or omicron, it stands for the sound or, and I would write the IPA, which looks like a kind of slightly open O with two dots, and I go, great, off I go. Oh no, no, that's not right. I would put the IPA symbol, the official symbol, and then I'd put in brackets, as in the word law, and then carry merrily on my way after that point. And then I come back to it and I go, no, because an American reader will go, la?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah,
Well, this is the kind of thing that as a kid, before I knew anything about IPA or these variations, I would read dinosaur books. And and one of the common classic things is they would give the pronunciation of a dinosaur name. And in, the last element of so many names is Saurus, and that would be written as Sawarus. I'm like, I've never heard anybody say Saurus, but that's
yeah,
how I read SAW, right? Like, what?
yeah.
But Anders asked is there if there's going to be an audiobook, and if so, when it might be released.
There is. Yes, the audiobook is recorded
Awesome.
and I believe it's going to be released at the same time.
Oh, perfect.
I recorded it in over the course of 5 days recently, and it was please listen to it. A lot of work went into it. It was a it was a brutal process. It was an absolutely like enjoyable in that, it's pretty cool. I love doing audio work. That is fun. I want to say that at the outset. I really enjoy creating pieces of audio. I have my podcast, for example, which I love making. I love making. I love working with sound. But you know, you can't have any air conditioning because that would be heard on the microphone. So it's
Awesome.
pretty hot, and you're in this booth 4 hours each day, 5 days in total, and you are just trying to make headway, power through the book, make it interesting to the listener. So I'm not just reciting in a neutral voice. I really want to go along with the way that I've written it in a kind of friendly, sometimes chatty way. And then you will just come across something that just does not translate into the medium of audio. It
Uh,
just does not translate whatsoever. And I'd say, chapter C, here's the letter C, and we're going to talk about the Etruscans, and we're going to talk about the Egyptians, and let's start with the Egyptians. And the letter C comes from an Egyptian hieroglyph, and it looks like this. How do I express that?
it's
How
like
do I say something?
you're trying to narrate
Yeah,
the alt text on an image or something like that, right? Uh,
bingo.
picture a bar with another bar, and yeah, I understand. I feel your pain. I've
Awful.
I've done a couple audiobooks too, and
Yeah.
gotten to some points where it's like,
Or
what am
like
I saying?
runes, for example,
Yeah,
but
that's what I
describing
thought.
runes. Yeah. Imagine a butterfly, but not a very good
Yeah,
butterfly.
right. Or just trying to visually describe thorn, right?
Right.
Because when I was doing like the Poetic Edda audiobook 10 years ago or something, saying like, okay, like it's like a P with another, it's like a draw B on top of a P, right? Like just
Right.
trying to figure out how to tell people what you're trying to show them in another medium. But it's
Yes.
it's just the reverse of the problem of the IPA, right?
Mm,
Like you just have to try to figure out a way to be objective to describe to people what they're seeing rather than what they're hearing.
exactly. I couldn't win. I couldn't win with this book. And the only thing I can do is that if this book does okay and people let me write another one, I'm not doing these things again. I'm not making these mistakes again. I need to write with expectation and hope that an audiobook might happen.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, one of my best recommendations for that is do not write the word similarly. Because when you find yourself on a microphone and you're trying similar, like it's just one of those words that like I just wound up replacing it with likewise everywhere because it's
Mm,
just impossible to say in a microphone and sound like a
yeah,
human being somehow. But
yeah.
I think you made a tremendous success of this book. Uh,
Thank you.
I think that
Thank you,
it's
Jackson.
fun. I think that it's something that anyone interested in language at all, or in the questions again that people ask all the time, uh, can read with a lot of fun. I want to
Thank you.
take some questions from the audience. I also want to ask you, I have two particular questions about two particular things you mentioned in your
Great.
dynamite footnotes. But I also want to ask you a general question, which is you've got 26 letters, 26
Mm.
chapters. Which one did you find yourself surprised the most about?
Oh, wow, that's nice. I thought you were going to say which is my favorite letter, which I don't have one, so that's
My
yeah.
favorite letter. I don't know how you would have a
But
favorite letter.
like what is my favorite? Ampersand. That's my favorite letter 'cause I
Yeah.
didn't have to write about it. Um, which one surprised me the most? Gosh, that is a good one. I There were definitely chapters where I felt that I was doing the more learning and more research because I did have to research things and dive into the literature and summarize it. And for that, at least, it does have to be chapter A.
Hmm.
Even though adore ancient history, big fan of ancient history. There was a lot that I needed to learn, basically, and I put this in acknowledgements. I could not have done this without a friend of mine, Benjamin, who looked at that kind of first draft and said, from the perspective of a scholar, this is okay. Like you're never going to get the field right, but this is okay because this field, this nameless field that studies the earliest origins of the alphabet in Egypt and the Middle East, nobody agrees on anything. Literally anything. They all seem to dislike each other as a field. I thought, I thought it was pretty bad in syntax. Yeah, it seems to be worse in this field. So I needed to kind of summarize this, and I really learned a lot. And about the nature of a field where you are working with so little information, literally fragments, and trying to piece together a theory or a story that satisfies all the evidence, which is not much. So I would definitely say that A would be the big one for me. Beside A, I would. I don't know. Everything else, the other chapters were kind of much more comfortable for me. They were a lot more English focused, so that was nice. I'm sort of running through them in my head. Uh, the exact little details, for example, about how W is a kind of troublesome letter because the sound W tends to add rounding and backing to whatever follows it. So hence why, warm doesn't rhyme with arm and harm for me, despite sharing a spelling. Or wand doesn't rhyme with hand and. It's different in your accent, Jackson, but nonetheless, there isn't a rhyme, and that's the kind of the fault of W.
Right.
So that was definitely something where I appreciated, you know, never really thought about that before. That's true, and I'll put it in. But chapter A and chapter D, which I enjoyed writing very much, where again I had to do more research. I decided to use chapter D to talk about the origins of lowercase letters. The story of the alphabet so far had taken the reader up into the days of Rome. We need to take this further. We need to go into the kind of the post-Roman or classical world, which is my favorite. So I enjoy this very much. And I needed to talk about where lowercase letters from because they're a medieval thing. They're a medieval invention. And D I thought was a perfect illustration because the bulge of a capital D points in the opposite direction to the bulge of a lowercase d.
Mhm.
But to get that right, I really needed to familiarize myself and immerse myself much more so in the field of paleography, so the study of old writing. So A and D, those are the questions those are the chapters where I felt I learned the most.
I enjoyed your treatment of that too, and you showed some examples of old Roman cursive, which, is just one of the hardest things in the world to read. Uh, that in itself is such a reminder that within our set of 26 signs, there is so much variation we have historically tolerated and what all of those look like. Uh,
Yeah.
to the point that like old Roman cursive looks different enough from anything that we use today, especially our lowercase, that it's like it looks like Etruscan, right? I mean, it's like it's a different set almost.
Yeah.
Um,
A
but
coupled with the couple, just to add on to tack onto that, that's coupled with the fact that the recognition of a letter as being an independent letter is actually almost not a physical thing, but a psychological thing.
Yep.
If you say, if I draw you a kind of a lowercase a with a single loop and a little tail, and then I draw you what we tend to have in online in printed formats as well, where it has a little hook, you would say that's the same letter.
Right.
But wind back the clock and you draw an I and a J for someone in, I don't know, the 15th century, they'd say, no, it's the same letter, same idea. So, we've got tremendous variation in what people are writing and what people are saying
Yep.
are separate letters. Anyway, sorry.
That was an excellent point you made, I believe, in the J chapter. And it's something that I often remind people about in studying runes because someone will say, well, this can't be coeval with this because look how different this letter shape is. And I think, look at your font book on your word processor and look at all the different ways you can type a lowercase g is my favorite because there's ludicrous variation in that.
Uh,
Yeah. So
mm,
we tolerate all kinds of variation and people in the past did too.
mhm.
That's not necessarily an argument, but as you said, everybody in writing studies or whatever we're going to call it hates each other. I have been kind of astonished by that, like the number of people who research this stuff, and of course, I'm most familiar with it on kind of like the runic and possible sources of runic alphabet study side, like the Etruscan, ancient Celtic stuff. The number of these people who have each other blocked, like, is actually comical.
Yeah.
They don't realize they're interacting with the same post by somebody else because they can't see each other's post.
What platforms is this happening on, like X or Blue Sky or
Yeah,
something?
yeah, yeah, possibly. I've
No.
like you can picture what I'm talking about, where you can actually sort of see that they don't realize that they're both interacting with the same thing because you're like, well, so and so would say, and it's like, well, he did say that 10 minutes ago. Like,
Yeah.
but you have
You
him
just
blocked,
can't see
so you
this.
didn't see it.
It honestly surprised me, and I mean, I suppose we have to bring in modern day politics as well. A lot of because the history of the alphabet is so connected and associated with the Middle East, there's going to be national divides as well. A tremendous number of extremely respected authors are or Jewish and Israeli, of course. And then you have a lot of very respected people who come from an Arabic point of view, and that could be a factor as well. A lot of these people can't actually visit the other person's country.
Mhm.
That's actually quite a common phenomenon in Middle Eastern studies. So, I don't want to belittle it and just say it's bickering. There's some very serious fault lines within these fields, and
Sure.
I was just surprised. We're trying to. I had to summarize all of this and make it accessible. Yeah,
Well, and try to either not step on people's toes or equally step lightly on a lot of toes,
yeah,
which the latter is what I often shoot for. Um, just knowing that just the way that I phrase this makes it sound like I'm on one side or another, but I have to use words, so I'm going to sound like,
yeah,
but I want to be fair. It is hard to do, and actually that reminds me just to briefly sidestep back to something else we talked about, the fact that if you were to try to change spelling today and base it on, say, a general American accent, that would be perceived as sort of a slap in the face, perhaps, to British or Australian or Irish, perhaps, writers. The nice thing about the fact that our spelling is so unphonetic is that it's sort of equally repressive to everybody, right? When I
yes.
spell night with a silent K, there's nothing about me that's like raging against the English or something, right?
Mm.
And vice, you know.
Nice. Well said. Well said. Yeah, exactly. This is the kind of phrasing I try to express this point as well. And again, I don't want to give English spelling an absolute free pass. But there was just something about this where, like, we're all in this together,
Right,
basically, and
right,
and of course, all of us, how shall we say, native English writers. Again, don't want to say speakers. As again, it all gets quite complicated, untangling speakers from writers. Native English speakers, we have the advantage that we get on board with this complicated system of writing as children. We're
right,
taught it at school, where we have a lot of time on our hands. You're an adult learner. You're coming from, my local language, which is Czech, and you're an adult learner. Suddenly, your boss says, "Right, 1990s, communism has fallen, no more Russian, no more German, which you learnt at school, time to learn English. And you're confronted with this bewildering language, which is this kind of Frenchy Germany with the spelling system. And I don't know, we need to, if people are writing English, well done, well done. And this was my, something. Yeah, this is the way that I phrased that exact point. There is tremendous diversity within nations, regions, cities, towns, communities, families, and even individuals in how English is spoken. Standard spelling is one thing keeping the English-speaking world united. Hence, there is a certain fairness to the clapped-out contraption that is standard English spelling. Because it doesn't work particularly well for anyone, it can work for everyone. So
Right.
that's the way that I put it.
Right. And I think that that's so important because we have so few shared institutions, right? But
Mm,
this is something that is equally oppressive or non-oppressive to any given speaker. I mean, it is, as you say, fairer to a native speaker than a non-native speaker, but that's just because of exposure,
yeah.
right? I mean, it's not like as a 5-year-old, this was intuitively easier to master. It's just that I had lots of time as a 5-year-old to figure it out.
Yeah, yeah. I was my schedule was pretty free
Yeah, right.
around that time. I had time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't have a lot of bills to pay at the time,
No,
but
no. So
I'll
it's yeah.
I want to
Continue.
ask you about two particular things in your footnotes that stood out to me. And these may be
Shoots.
very particular, but I just want you to like at least email me what you're talking about. One was there's a possible Slavic inscription in runes from the Czech Republic. Did I read that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Where, can you
I
send me
yeah.
that? Because I've never seen this and I would love to see that. Whatever,
Of
just
course.
if you would just take a note to email that to me. I really want to see what that is.
Okay.
But then you mentioned in another footnote a potential abecedarium alphabet written out on something from 2400 BC. Was that from Syria?
Mm, yes.
What is that? I've never heard of that either.
Okay. So I'm happy to talk about both of these things. The second one with a little bit more bile and emotion than the previous one. Uh, so that the first one, yeah, again, I will find you the reference. I'm not making this up, but it's one of those things where I'm not within the field. Something like a find of runes from the Czech Republic. It comes to me in the news. It comes to me in like news that talk about history and academia for a non-specialist audience. That find, I'm pretty sure, was at least announced in 2019 or 2020
Okay.
and it was found in a site in southern Moravia, so that's the southeast of the country, in something like 2010. And it took a long time for people to study it, publish it. I don't know why it takes so long. But then it's this announcement, and I've heard nothing more about it. And if there are articles, they're in journals that I haven't found, unfortunately. So I will try to dig that up for you. I
Okay.
don't know if the text is actually in Slavic. I'm pretty sure what the original news article says is it's in a Slavic context. So, in a
Okay.
layer of history that seems to post-date or be contemporaneous with the arrival of the Slavs, future Czechs and Moravians. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So
So that,
this, I think part of what has happened with this story, whatever exactly the core of it is within that runic subsection of the study of the history of writing, everyone I feel like is persuaded that they just they're on constant lunatic watch by everyone else. And so any news that sounds really cool, it's like we have to
mhm.
be really careful about slow walking this because if I say anything that sounds like, just a little bit out of what you expect, people are going to call me a lunatic and never listen to me again.
Yeah,
Uh, so I feel like
of
that's
course.
probably part of what makes the news travel real slow in that particular branch.
Yeah,
But
being
okay,
absolutely cautious. Yeah.
I'll be interested to see that. So what about this abecedarium from 2400 BC?
Well, firstly, it's not an abecedarium, so it's
Okay.
not a complete listed alphabet. It's a text with signs that apparently look like some early form of the alphabet.
Okay, I
Uh,
misunderstood.
so, um, to,
Still,
to,
that's
to,
really early.
yeah, it's extremely early, and okay, maybe if I set the scene, my own personal interaction with this, you can sense the depth of emotion that I have against this particular artifact.
Okay.
Chapter A was the most difficult to write, as I've already mentioned. Trying to get it right, summarize the field, all quite tricky. and I set it to one side. I think, okay, feeling good. My friend Benjamin in the Netherlands has, given it his blessing as someone within the field, and I sail on towards chapter B, C, and the rest. I submit the first manuscript of the book, the rough draft, in what would it have been, October of 2024. In November of 2024, 1 month later, I'm scrolling Blue Sky, random article, total luck. Find that threatens to upset the alphabetic story revealed by scientists. And it is a gut punch. I'm on the bus. I want to get off the bus and run home as quickly as possible because I cannot believe it. And it is, again, I'm purely from my perspective, I have found a single article in a sort of sciencey academic online news paper talking about this. It is totally light on information. It cites two experts who don't agree, of course. One of whom says, yep, this is potential dynamite. The other one says it's too early to tell. And then nothing. Silence. Absolute silence.
Great.
So I sit with this. I calm myself down. I think, right, okay. I digest that newsletter article. I do my best to find more information about it. I come up with nothing. Again, because I just don't think I have access to the scholarship if it exists. And I then just put it in a footnote. I go with that. I put it in a footnote. I readjust the wording of the original chapter to say something like, the story I've hesitantly sketched out here, etc., like that. I'm a former PhD student. I'm used to writing very hesitantly, and then that's how I've left it. That's what I've gone with. I've made my peace with the fact that new finds will upset the story of the alphabet, and that's cool. And I've written a book in such a way that I think I've covered myself
Sure.
when those finds turn up.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you don't say, well, and anything that contradicts this story is clearly, going to be false. Like there are
Yeah,
books, like I could actually reach and show you a book about runes that is aged very poorly in that exact respect. It was like, of course, nothing earlier than X ever be discovered. That's a really
yeah.
stupid thing to say.
That's exactly it. I'm watching in real time the books about Indo-European, which is my
Oh
comfort
yeah.
zone. I'm watching the books go out of date on my
Yeah, yeah.
shelf. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's incredible, and that's the way it
Well,
is.
right now, I mean, like actually the publisher sent me JP Mallory's new book,
Mm,
and
okay.
we never ended up actually doing a interview about it, I guess. But um, I was just thinking to myself, wow, this is like, just like fire hot off the oven. And in a
Yeah,
year, it's going to need to be half revised because all this stuff is changing so fast. But,
exactly. This is just it, and it's just still kind of trickling out, and that's okay.
yeah, but you wrote it in such a way that I think that, you know, some of the great, what's the best way to put it, general audience, but academically informed books about linguistics have aged fine because they didn't
Mm.
pretend to have the ultimate truth about anything. I mean, actually, one of the books that I found myself thinking about while reading yours, not sure if you've read it, not sure if you'll take this as a compliment or not. Do you remember, did you ever read Nicholas Osler's book, Empires of the Word?
Oh yes, teenage Danny lapped that up.
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. So that book's about 20 years old.
Mm.
Facts have changed that would have caused particular sentences to be reworded here and there, but he didn't write it as if he had the absolute answers. That book is still perfectly enjoyable and
Mm.
informative and in broad strokes, which, like down to actually pretty narrow points, but in broad strokes, still perfectly acceptable, I think. I still
Yeah.
really like that book.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And frankly, when I was first getting into linguistics, realizing that the field even existed, like that was kind of it that my local bookshop had. So
Mhm.
it's a good thing that it was a good book because that's all I had to go off growing up in 2000s Norwich in East Anglia, which is not a there's not much on the shelves of our bookshops about linguistics, so I had to make do with that.
Sure.
But you can go in the opposite direction. You can write something like Laura Spinney's new book, Proto,
Mm.
which I've interviewed her about, got to know Laura, which goes in the opposite direction and so explicitly says, "I am writing this book in this year."
Okay.
the things are going to go out of date. And weirdly, I think it's the opposite tactic, and it will work just as well
Yeah, sure.
by,
Sure.
yeah,
I mean, as long as you are firmly grounding it that way and probably reminding people about that frequently. Like, hey, as
yeah,
of 2025, yeah,
yeah. This
yeah,
is just it. So all of these things, it's all we can do, and I do hope that for the linguists, for the academically minded and grounded people who read the book, that will come across.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and that's why I wanted to favorably compare it to Empires of the Word, because both books take a subject that you could write about in the most, you know, technical hemming and hawing possible way that would maybe please scholars. Scholars don't need to read it because they already know all this stuff. But you take, again, the questions people really ask, give them good, solid answers, maybe flesh some things out in footnotes and works cited, but
mm.
it's just the right amount to be like, I think that it's great.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, I mean, it's firstly, thank you, and secondly, that principle, it's on the front cover. It's a history of our letters. It's not the history of our letters. And
Nice, nicely
let's
said.
yeah,
Nicely said. I
thank
mean,
you.
that's in the same spirit. Lots of books could be retitled and retitled well, but I don't know. I think you did a fine job, sir. So I do want to compliment you on it.
Thank you.
There's my endorsement.
Hey, I treasure it. I treasure it because you know what you're talking about, and I really appreciated having you in my corner for checking the rune stuff.
Oh, it was my
Cool.
pleasure, and thanks for sending me the proof so I could read the book ahead of everybody else. We've
Yeah,
got a
yeah.
few Patreon supporters here. Does anyone have a question or remark you'd like to address to our
Yeah,
guest?
please. And thank you, Lorian, for the comment about lowercase and dyslexia. Yeah, great. English isn't the alphabet has not made it easy for you there. Not at all. Goodness.
Yeah, I've wondered sometimes about if there are alphabets that are a little bit better for
Mm.
people with that kind of struggle. And
Mm.
I have the random thought that perhaps glagolitic
Okay,
and
continue.
having all of these symmetrical Space Invader looking letters is perhaps slightly better in that respect. But
Space Invader. Sorry. Yeah, that's great. That's great. I'll bear that in mind. Yeah, I mean, they are extremely distinct characters. Glagolitic has its faults as well. It does not help that some letters are actually quite similar to one another.
oh yeah,
But
sure.
yeah, speaking as somebody in who lives in the country that where Glagolitic may have been invented, it's all quite Czechs are quite proud of it. And again, that was a brilliant revelation of just the way that you can't assume for different countries what linguistic knowledge people will have.
Hmm.
I was doing this little kind of mini project on Old Church Slavonic during my PhD, and I was telling my parents about this cool script that I've been working with called Glagolitic. No idea, never heard of it. Fair enough. I tell my in-laws about Glagolitic, and they go, "Yeah, halaholitse. Of course, we know what that is."
Oh,
So yeah, because again, what linguistic information is tied to sort of national project of your country as well, and the people, the brothers or the brother, the missionary who invented Glagolitic, he's well known about to the extent. I was heading into the city center of Prague the other day, and a tram went past me with Glagolitic on the side, which I
oh,
liked. That was cool. That made me very
okay.
happy. Yeah, very, very
Oh.
happy. So yeah.
Well, yeah, you never know. I mean, just the things that you're going to be aware of because it's become part of identity, right? I don't feel like there's much about writing that's part of British or American identity that I can think of that anybody, like any distinctive, like the closest thing is maybe the joking, like it really is just joking as far as I can tell stuff about like, oh, well, do you spell honor with a U or without a U? I mean, nobody cares,
Yeah.
right? Like it's not distinctive at all.
No.
Um, Whereas I feel like in the Scandinavian languages, there's maybe a little bit more attention to this stuff. You know, like you see the little signs in Finland with the guy tossing the O letter into the trash can because it's a letter that's only used in Swedish, and it's like, why do we still have Swedish in school? Uh,
Right.
that's that kind of shorthand, but I can't think of much of that in the English speaking world.
No. No.
There's a couple things in the questions. Cameron said, which of the various lost letters of the English alphabet are you sorriest we lost? For example, thorn
Ah,
or win.
nice. Nice question, Cameron. It's Thorn. Come on, it's Thorn. So I mean, firstly, there is we shouldn't acknowledge that Thorn. We shouldn't say that Thorn would just like be a perfect solution. Like, how would Thorn look in everyday handwriting, for example? When, as we've already discussed, it's kind of looks a little bit like a P, kind of looks like a lowercase b as well. And there is this great system, which, as far as I was able to tell while writing this book, seems to be a fairly organic Middle English invention, which is to use H as a kind of diacritic. So TH, CH, SH, WH, that's a good system that we have in place. We shouldn't say that Thorn is, automatically superior. But there is just something about Thorn that it's just so old and it fits. We have so many of these essential words that we write all the time with two letters when one could be used instead. Um, I would, I would support I'm going to say this, go on the record and say I would support to reform spelling that includes thorn
Okay.
and ejects Q uh, from the spelling, which I fully lay into over the course of the book. I call it
Mhm.
that most useless of Roman gifts, and maybe also maybe either straightens out the letter Y or gets rid of it altogether. Probably just straightens it out. But yeah, Cameron, I'd say Thorn. Win doesn't hold such an affection for me. But yeah, great question.
Well, you talk about confusing letters, Win versus P. That's hard. But modern Icelanders, of course, use Thorn and
Mm,
do have a handwriting solution to it, which, of course, I handwrite with Thorn all the time just because it saves me, zero point zero 0.01 of a second. But you just
mm.
do an extra little
Oh,
serif
nice.
on the left, and it makes it pretty distinct from a P in addition to the ascender.
That's nice. That gives a sense that the upward ascender is like a definite part. It's an essential part rather than,
Yeah.
an upward stroke or a mistake or something like that. Yeah.
And I'll point out, and this is maybe just a mild original reflection on alphabet studies. I am extremely frequently in the position of having to request books at libraries that have Thorn in the title, right? So
Hmm.
I have come to realize that if I go into WorldCat or whatever and I search for that, Thorn is always going to be misread as P. It is never misread as B.
Right.
I'm always going to be putting in, uh, you know, ping Vetlayer instead of thing or Bing Vetlayer. And I
Hmm.
guess the descenders are just a little bit more psychologically salient to us than the
Hmm.
ascenders. I don't know, but I think that's kind of an odd reflection.
That is, yes, of course, yeah. That's a good hack for what you need to do. If you're searching for something in, say, Icelandic, for example,
Yeah.
yeah, be
Yeah,
prepared for a P.
it's
Yeah,
always P, not B. So I don't know.
yeah.
People just notice the descender more than the ascender.
That reminds me of a point as well that I really would very much like to ask. So we have these two letters, which I mentioned, briefly, one much more than the other in the book. We have thorn and we have eth or eth, however you choose to pronounce it, which, as I understand it, stand for two distinct sounds in Icelandic today.
Icelandic, yeah.
But all the evidence for Old English points to them being one and the same and being interchangeable. That's the word that I went with. But the Old English writers are pretty ruthlessly efficient in their writing, especially in the in the Wessex standard that we have kind of the most documents from. Do you have any? I'd love to know your thoughts about why these two letters endure in Old English when they're really strict about one letter, more or less one letter for one sound.
I don't know because I've never noticed that there's a systematic distribution of them in documents that use both, right? You'll see the
Right.
same word written with both. And the inconsistency is surprising, right? Because
Mm.
why? Right? Why, like,
Yeah.
so actually, I think this is interesting as a comparison for the history of Elderfrulak runes, because there's this one rune we actually don't know the sound value of. And the earliest inscription that it's actually used in a word, it just replaces an I. So it's like, are these just two I's that they had for some reason? They actually both look like different variations of iota.
Mm.
So, you know, I it, you would make a little bit more sense to me if there was some distinction between their placement or just what words they occurred in, right? Because you could see how that tradition could be maintained. But how is the tradition of confusion maintained? That's a little bit surprising to me.
Yeah,
Wh-
exactly.
When the two letters are imported to Iceland, they fairly quickly, it's in the 1200s that they decide that, okay, these represent voice versus voiceless. Like that's, which is perfectly reasonable. I don't know why that wasn't implemented in England or some other distinction made or just a decision made between them. There are
Mm,
documents that use just one,
yeah,
but anyway, yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
it is weird.
It is a very strange thing, and it seems uncharacteristic of our Old English texts,
Mhm.
which, especially from Wessex, are remarkably standardized in basically all other,
Yeah.
respects. To think
Yeah.
that, yeah.
It's as if we routinely went back and forth between K's and Q's
Mm,
and had
yeah.
no pattern about where we put them, right? Like it just, yeah, it is weird, but
It is,
interesting open
yeah.
question.
And I mean, the way that I would make progress as someone from the field of linguistics would be to do some sort of big data crunching
Yeah.
and try and see if there's any patterns of just track the instances of these two letters, see what occurs, account for authorship, time, genre, all the usual good factors, variables, and see what occurs. And I'd be surprised if someone hasn't done that already, but that's not my field. So, yeah.
Yeah, you would need a huge corpus and you need to probably do it manually just to make sure that because you would have to look at manuscripts because so many editions standardize it.
Hmm.
It would be a huge pain, but it would be great.
Yeah.
I'd love to see that study or maybe if I somehow invent a way to add 60 hours to my week, I'll go do it.
Yes, take a holiday and number crunch Old English instead.
Or I'll work on it. Um, Anders said, do you know when the book will be available on Amazon US? I only see it on Amazon UK at the moment.
Yes, great question, Anders. I don't know, is the reluctant and disappointed answer to that, unfortunately. The distribution of the book has all been kind of out of my hands. I know that the publishers who are UK based, UK and Ireland, even though they're actually a Swedish company, thought it was interesting, they will definitely sell it in America, but the idea of a US deal has been just I don't know. It's totally out of my hands, and there's yeah, we're just I'm still hoping for it basically. A deal with a US publisher is not a necessary step to actually being able to get it, but it does mean that there's somebody in the US who's printing it, encouraging people to buy it, putting work in. So it would be great to have that deal, but there hasn't been, as far as I know, there hasn't been that progress yet. I All I can say is that it will be available, if not already, on things like Amazon, basically. So yeah, I wish I had a more kind of optimistic answer for that regard, but I'm yeah, I've got people working on it. I can say
Yeah.
that much. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been on the other side of this, uh, waiting for things
Oof.
to be available in Europe.
£13 shipping. It's like
Yeah.
the book is £15, so it's yeah.
Well, and right now it's really hard to get stuff
Yeah.
because I order a lot of books from Europe, and like a few weeks ago, people just stopped sending them. So it's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, you've got yeah. That's makes me sad to say as well. Things are a lot more difficult, but maybe things will improve generally and specifically for the book as well. We'll see.
Well, and I hope that you get attention from people who can really move books because, as I said, I really think you have a potentially very big audience for this.
Great.
Wetland says, could I put you down as a supporter of bringing back Boostrafadon? You do
No,
mention it,
I do,
and
but no.
you have the fascinating visual experience for the reader of actually writing a little bit of English in Boostrafadon without
Yep, I
telling
do.
us that you're about to do it, and it is
Nope.
startling when you do.
Yes. There is a little bit of kind of evil glee within me as a writer where I do enjoy kind of playing with the reader's expectations and keeping the reader on side and keeping them aware. So yes, I do include an example of that, and I promise explain my outburst there. I'll share the screen share my screen again so you can see that. So,
Oh, you want to spoil your Boostraphodon surprise?
oh, okay. It's we're all friends here at the end of the day. Share. No, wrong one. There we go. So hopefully you can see this now.
Not just
Yeah,
yet.
right from the
No, I see it.
beginning, the letters of the alphabet are faced in the direction of writing. While it can get complicated to find the front of a letter, again, what is the front? What does that mean for a letter to have a front? If you define, the front of a letter by the direction of writing, well, what do you do in cases like Bostrophodon? It's quite hard. We have an intuitive sense that the Phoenician letter, this is Bate in Phoenician, ancestor of B, has a flat side and a pointy side. Writing from right to left, it was the pointy bit that looked towards the end of its word and its line. The Greeks followed this principle too, but they were apparently more fluid than the Phoenicians in their direction of writing. Genuinely, like again, had to work with this as well. We have no examples of a Boustrophodon from Phoenicia, which is really weird because then we find it in Greece.
Hmm.
And that honestly seems like just an absence of evidence. Like one day we are going to unearth this because it's so strange how it's just bizarre that the Greeks or that the Phoenicians would be writing consistently right to left, and then the Greeks come away with this kind of zigzag pattern instead. Odd.
Hmm.
Lots of open questions about the actual transmission of the alphabet from the Phoenicians to the Greeks, such as the massive question of when it actually happened. Anyway, I digress. Again, I keep doing this. So here we are. It's like Bostrephodon is a marvelous piece of terminology. It's built from the Greek words bous, meaning ox, and strophe, meaning turn, inspired by the path of an ox as it pulls a plough up and down a field. Just as an ox reaches the end and turns, the term refers to writing in which the line proceeds one direction, bloody, 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 blah. So I kind of then immediately changes to a new line and in the opposite direction. So I'm kind of messing with the readers there, expectations. Rather than shifting your pen, or rather your chisel, to the other side of the page, or rather stone block, but Strepherdon snakes its way in one direction than the other. So that's the idea. So chapter B, perfect example to talking about the direction of writing. Seems relevant. It is the way that we write in English today cannot be taken for granted.
I thought it was fun. And also pointing out that the arguments about why one writes left to right or right to left and how that might be related to handedness. There's really nothing about handedness that makes it make any sense because people are dominantly right-handed all around the world.
Yes. Yes. This frustrating thing that like people say, okay, the switch to left to right writing seems to be firmly, a Greek event. Phoenicians generally right to left in the opposite direction, so therefore it must have been like it was just better hand, but with no evidence whatsoever that the Phoenicians were like a bunch of left-handers.
Right. It doesn't.
No evidence whatsoever. Like all the evidence or all the speculation points to the belief that Phoenicians were also right-handers. So why does the alphabet gets flipped among the Greeks, basically? So that's the idea. And if I may, there's another example that I would like to share. This is from chapter C, where I'm kind of playing with the reader because I do enjoy that. Talk about the Etruscans. This Etruscan change to the sound of C. So notice that C is the sister to gamma, which is a g sound, a voiced sound, is all to do with the Etruscans and their language, all good stuff. Ancient Italy. I love the Etruscans as a topic. The Etruscan change is still reflected in our alphabet today because our letters have never existed in a vacuum, but rather have been caught up in the political and social status quo of the day. For the next 2 centuries, the Etruscans were the dominant power in Italy, so how they used the letter C had a certain prestige. If another nation with a different language had been top dog, or if the alphabet had arrived after the Etruscan decline, our C might still have the sound G, and our alphabet might seem closer to its Greek grandfather
Yeah, right.
or Greek grandfather. Yeah, totally lost, unfortunately, in the audiobook, but I am quite proud of that bit.
Oh yeah, that would be some of these tricks would be sort of because how can you read in Boostraphodon, right? Yeah, it's
Nah, no, 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 nothing like that whatsoever. So there we go. Nice uh, bit of good stuff. Yeah. Yeah, this book is like only I could have written it, and that's not a brag. That's like this book is so crammed full of my interest. It's the sort of book that I would like to read. There's a lot about ancient history and Etruscans, and if you like that, then it's the book for you.
And
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with saying it has a lot of your personality in it. That's a great personality for presenting about linguistics
Okay.
in an accessible way.
I'm enthusiastic. Yeah. What?
You
What?
say,
Yes. No. There's no doubt about that. Yeah. My poor colleagues at the radio station are kind of like, okay, Danny's gone off on one. Uh, we have a great comment from Wetland. Again, isn't it that because you held a chisel in your dominant hand? Sort of. Okay. Yeah. Well, again, we need to explain the Phoenician Greek switch. Like, I think they're both chiseling as cultures. So, but no, again, this is the frustration. Like, I can spend a year, 2 years with this topic and unpacking the relationship between speech and writing, and indeed reading, which is a separate activity, and overlook something like the medium in which it's being written. And this is a great point, great question. That the act of actually creating the text.
well, I think that one issue that's always going to come up with explanations is that they often become just so stories, right? Because,
Mm,
someone says, well, when I whittle, I go from the right to the left of the stick. And then, like, and that just seems natural to me. And then,
mm.
like, well, there's nothing natural about whittling in one particular direction. So you're just assuming that because that's what you instinctively do is what everybody instinctively does. I mean,
Yeah.
you run into this in runology semi-frequently with uh trying to think of something, an example I can make up so I'm not throwing someone under the bus. But stuff like that, basically, like, oh yeah, well, I whittle right to left, so that's why. It's like, well, that's not an explanation because someone else might whittle left to right who
Yeah.
this, yeah.
Exactly. We always have to acknowledge our bias and our perspective. But at the same time, I would still appreciate that comment because that's an example of the experience of writing that is
Yeah,
so easily lost.
yeah,
So easily lost. Like, arguably, certain aspects of the shapes of our letters come from not the needs of speech in a particular point in time, but indeed what they are being written on
yeah.
in the medium, the format. Capital letters work pretty well when you have time. They're shapely, they're kind of fulsome, especially the square capitals that we still tend to use today. If you are carving an inscription that's going above, I don't know, the Colosseum in Rome, or what is that arch? I think it's the Arch of Constantine next to it, big inscription up the top. You've got time, and you've got capital letters, and you need people to read them from a distance as well, where that's a totally different experience to the act of scrawling something on a piece of papyrus that you're hoping is going to be chucked away and not accidentally preserved for 2,000 years, and then nosy archaeologists go and read it. And that will influence the way that you write and the shape of your letters.
Mhm.
Just such a gloriously rich topic, and uh, frustrating to write about.
But you're right about it. Well,
Okay.
I think we've taken a good amount of your time here and really
Okay.
appreciate you talking about the book. Really hope people
Thank
go
you.
and check it out. Certainly once it arrives in the USA. Uh, Hopefully that'll be soon. And look forward to hopefully having you back to talk about all of your enthusiastic interests. Of course, you say you're enthusiastic like someone would say, I have the flu, but I think it's great. You have great
Yeah.
enthusiasm for the subject and you present it so
Thank
well.
you.
So thank you, Danny.
Thank you, Jackson. Well, I much appreciated. Thank you so much for having me back. It's the third time, so this is an honor. And yeah, just thanks for listening, everyone. I really I really feel like I'm amongst friends when I do these things, and it's yeah, it makes the process, the awkward process of getting the word out about this book better. So I really appreciate it.
Well, I, I
Yeah.
having been there, I know what you're talking about. So,
Yeah. Well, I have to say, I really have to say, I would love it if you can spare the time to talk, where I can turn the tables and we can talk about the Poetic Edda and I can
sure.
get an interview out of you. Just another day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hey, oh, this does not need to be today. You're a touch busy.
a
Um,
little bit,
yeah, you
little
know how to
bit.
reach me. We'll talk about it. Love to.
Thank you. I am. I'm not looking at my phone, but my family are in the air at the moment,
Hey,
soon to be arriving in this country. So it's all kind of
look,
happening. But there was,
huge
yeah.
huge congratulations. Enjoy it. Take your, enjoy yourself this month. Don't just be thinking about work, and hopefully you're getting good news about the book every day too. By the
I
way,
hope
Anders,
so.
shout out to your podcast as he enjoys it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Anders. I really appreciate that. Again, I don't really know who's listening, so to have confirmation is great.
Yeah, I know what you mean,
Yeah.
actually. Like the have you ever had the experience where you meet someone in real life who actually, listens to you or reads your books or something? It's wow, you're a
Yeah.
person. It's like
Tell me more. Seriously, thank you. I shake their hand enthusiastically because you throw these things out into the internet and just hope that people will gem, and they really do. They just, the majority of people who enjoy and consume the content are silent. And that's fine. Every time I listen to a podcast, I devour podcasts. I'm hardly writing a message to say thanks very much. I just don't. I get it, and but yeah, I just really, I wish all the best for your YouTube platform as well, which I love. I still love.
well, thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
need to get better about giving good shout outs to people who do good things. Um,
yeah,
but this interview series that I do occasionally on YouTube is one way that I try to do it. To say like, hey, you've written a book that's good, come talk about it. Or, you wrote a
yeah.
paper that's interesting, come talk about it. But
People really
anyway,
appreciate it. Really, really appreciate.
thanks.
I certainly really appreciate it. It's a very natural format because it's yeah, and there's a nice unpredictability to it as well. I could not have predicted how this conversation was going to go, and that's great.
Yeah, well, I could only have predicted you were going to sound like a Disney villain.
Yeah, no, no, no. This actually, I do actually sound like this. This is not a fake accent. This is not a bit. This is my real accent. And the scary thing is that my fiance, in 2 days' time, my wife, when I met her 10 years ago, she really sounded a lot cooler, and now she sounds like me, and that's scary. You know. you know, people are going to notice this at the weekend. It's very British, and it's not just the accent, the particular phonetic realization of certain things. It's the lexicon. It's very
Oh,
scary,
wow. So do you
very
sound like
scary.
her in Czech?
Uh, my Czech is heavily influenced by her family's, 100%. 100% in good ways and bad ways. In good ways, in that it does sound quite authentic. Even today, I met somebody for the first time speaking Czech, and you're like, you don't sound English, which is
Yeah.
great. Love that phonologically kind of hidden. And then I give myself away by saying something I shouldn't, because it's actually kind of family talk, idiolect specific to this family.
Oh,
Um, I'll leave you with an example of this, which I love telling people because it was a couple of years ago when I've got over the embarrassment, which is we're in this restaurant in the north of the country. In a restaurant, I can sound very convincingly Czech. I know what to say. I know the script. I'm with my fiance. I'm with my dad and my brother, who don't speak a word of Czech. And the waitress clearly thinks that these guys are English, foreign, and this young man and young woman are Czech, can
okay.
sound authentic, right? And it's all going very well until we get to the end of the meal, and I use a phrase which Caroline, that's my fiance Carolina, what her mother always says to me at the end of every meal, which is the waitress comes up to me and says in Czech something like "A máte další přání?" like, "Do you have further wishes?" Very formal, language. And I say, quote verbatim, "Ne, děkuju," no thank you. "Já jsem napapanej." And the waitress her eyes just go wild. My fiance loses it laughing because what I've not said is no thank you, I'm full, but what I've really said is no thank you, my tum tum's full.
It's pretty great.
Which is because I've used an extremely informal word, not a rude word, but like a really casual word that you would only say in the context of like a small child or the home where you can get away with it.
Yeah,
And this is the danger. This is the danger. So yeah, she sounds like me. I sound like her family, and isn't that lovely?
it is. Well, congratulations,
Yeah,
sir. Go out and
thank
enjoy.
you. No,
We'll see you soon, I hope.
I would love that very much. Just keep in contact, and best wishes to you and your lovely lady as well. I look forward to more appearances of her on the platform.
They are guaranteed. All right.
Good, very
And
good.
hopefully we all get to meet one day, for real.
I'd love that. Oh gosh, I'd love that. Who knows? I might come to America. If you're in Europe, please let me know. Maybe the idea of a Slavic runic inscription might tempt you to the Czech Republic away from Scandinavia and Iceland. Maybe, maybe.
Well, who knows? I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
I get. Anyway, we'll see. All the best.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jackson. Thank you for everybody for joining us. Bye
Bye.
for now.